Group blackot share korisa? Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to lecture 4. And today we are going to start a new unit, unit 2, which is human values. Human values. If you have gone through the syllabus, you might have seen. And I have been reminding you repeatedly to go through your syllabus and be very thorough with your syllabus. Remember everything that is there, all the keywords that are included in the syllabus are so important. Syllabus and PYQs are two most important things that you cannot afford to ignore, right? Okay. I hope you can hear me properly. Am I audible? There was another live class going on and it was continuing past 2. Therefore, I could not start my class exactly at 2. But yeah, we are good now. Let me take one pink color. Pink is my current favorite. Wait. Why is it still yellow? Not sure. Anyway. Okay. So human values. Human values. But before that, let's... What did they do to the... to all that was included in the syllabus, all the keywords? Okay. So this one. Pay attention here. Today's unit is human values, and here we have to learn lessons from the lives and teachings of great leaders, reformers, and administrators. Here we have to learn role of family, role of society, educational institutions in inculcating values, and group discussions and activities on identifying and promoting core human values. So this was included in the syllabus. Now, first things first, what do we even understand by human values? What does it mean, human values? What does it mean? So values are the individual principles or principles or qualities that guide judgment. Principles or qualities that guide judgment and behavior. Not just judgment, but it guides our behavior. Values guides our behavior. And what are values? They are individual principles that guides our judgment and behavior of a person or a group. Okay, so values are some desirable qualities that we seek in a person. Values are concerned with character and conduct. These are the keywords. So let me know who all are attending live. I want to see, I want to know you, know your names. Yeah? And stop me in case you do not understand anything, and you can ask questions as well. So values are concerned with character, first of all, and conduct of a person, and evaluate the voluntary and habitual actions of individuals with reference to their being right or wrong. Okay, moral and immoral acts are determined or are guided by what? By the values that a person carries. Okay. So before we dive into the chapter, as always, we are going to go through some of the PYQ, some of the questions that have been asked in past years in UPSC. So let's check. In 2021, it was asked teachings of leaders and reformers. And therefore, I was asking you to pay attention to the syllabus. just now we had gone through the syllabus and everything that was mentioned, and we saw that thoughts of leaders, teachings of leaders and reformers, this one came directly from the syllabus. Okay, teachings of leaders and reformers never grow old, bring out their significance in the modern context. In the modern context, this is okay. In the modern context for 10 marks. Okay, now we are not going to solve it now, we are going to solve it at the end of the chapter, at the end of the unit. We are just going through it, we are priming our brains, and we are activating our brains to notice everything that is important while we study. Okay, Mahatma Gandhi, there were several quotes that are asked from quotes of thought leaders, quotes of reformers, and this is a quote by Mahatma Gandhi that was asked in 2023. You need to explain this. A man is but a product of his thoughts. A man is but a product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. And you need to write on this, explain this. Then there's another quote by Warren Buffett. It was asked in 2018. In looking for people to hire, you look for 3 qualities, he's saying: integrity, intelligence, and energy. Integrity, intelligence, and energy. Okay, and if they do not have the first, the other 2 will kill you. If a person does not have integrity but has intelligence and energy, they'll kill you. Okay, next question is from 2022. Why? I am not sure why am I not able to increase the thickness of this. Anyway, education is not an injunction. It is an effective and pervasive catalyst for a change in the outlook, attitude, and practices of an individual. In this context, examine the role of family. You need to examine the role of family, society, and educational institutions in inculcating values. See, even this question is asked directly from the syllabus. Yeah? Okay. So, and next is another quote by APJ Abdul Kalam. It was asked in 2017. If a country is to be corruption free and become a nation of beautiful minds, I strongly feel there are 3 key societal members who can make a difference. They are father, mother, and teacher. This was the question that was asked in 2017. So these are some of the questions. Now that we have primed our brains a little bit, we can go deeper into the topic. Okay. See, values are individual principles. We have already done this slide. Oh, no, not that. So values are individual principles or qualities that guide our judgment. This board is a little bit weird. Okay. That guide our judgment and behavior of a person or a group that we have already covered. Now, it's saying that values flow from the highest of our own self. It is saying that values are something, values are innate, and it flows from inside. From where? From the highest of our own self. That means from the highest version of our own self, that is self-actualization. If you have read or heard about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then we understand that at the top of the pyramid, we have a self-actualized being, self-actualized human being who have risen up from basic needs to, basic needs of food, shelter, everything, career, and they have ultimately reached the peak where we call a human being, where they are acting out of their full potential, and they are acting out of their highest self. That is called a self-actualized being. That was a theory given by Abraham Maslow. And we are saying that values flow from the highest of our own self. It flows from inside of us. It is something innate, it is saying. Okay, so values are concerned with character and conduct of a person, and evaluate the voluntary and habitual actions. Okay, there is another view. There's another perspective, okay, on values, that this self-managing mechanism is not intuitive. Just now, we had already stated, we have taken a different perspective. Just now, our first perspective was values are something inherent, something innate, something that is inside of us, and it flows from inside to outside. Okay, in to out. Okay, but there's another view, there's another perspective where we are saying that values are not only intuitive but is acquired from the environment. This is an opposing view where we are saying that we acquire values from outside, from our surroundings, from the environment we are in. Okay, a little bit of contradicting viewpoint. By continuous teaching, because people teach, we learn, we are continuously observing, continuously learning and absorbing things from our environment. And the behavior of others, people teach us, and we also learn by observing people, by observing the behavior of others. That is social learning, social modeling, learning through observation. Okay, especially the superior in age statuses as perceived by an individual. We always try to copy people, emulate people, people whom we admire, people who are higher than us in age, more experienced than us, more higher than us in statuses. In every way, we try to emulate them, we try to be like them and learn from them. Okay, so that's another way that we learn and inculcate values. We cannot deny the impact of environment, society, family of an individual for the values he imbibes. We cannot just blindly say that, okay, values are innate, values come from inside and flow towards outside. That will be a very restricted and limited viewpoint. And the comparison between these two viewpoints is like, it's a concept where you can say that the values that come from inside are like internal seeds of values. This one, the second perspective, is like external soil that shapes how the seed grows. Yes, we do carry some values from inside. Certain values are intrinsic. Yes, these are innate and it flows from inside out. But then our environment is like a soil. The values we carry that come from inside are like seeds, and the environment is like the soil that helps nourish the seed and helps the seed grow. Okay, values are not coded into our DNA. We learn them by looking around us. It's not coded in our DNAs. We have to teach children values. Just because a child is born in a family of who practices or who carries high values, very desirable values, that does not mean that the child will automatically know everything. They have to be taught. The mirror and the sponge. So, this is an analogy. A human child is born as a moral sponge. Human child is born as a sponge. They will absorb whatever environment they are placed in. Okay, we do not look inward intuitively to find values. We look outward to decode what is acceptable. We don't, when we are in a certain dilemma kind of a situation, we do not just look inward to understand what is acceptable. Oftentimes we look outward for confirmation, for validation, to understand what is acceptable to the family, to the society that we live in. Then this power of proximity. Why the family matters first? Because long before a child understands abstract words like honesty, like integrity, transparency, punctuality, discipline, long before they learn these words or the meaning of these words, they watch their parents. If they observe their parent, their father or their mother lying, then early on the child perceives lying to be acceptable. The child thinks that lying is an acceptable tool for convenience. Okay? Then age and status. Humans are hierarchical. Humans are hierarchical. That means we understand hierarchy. We pay attention and we are subjected to hierarchy. We naturally copy the behavior of those who hold power, status, or age superiority. That is why there's this phenomenon of celebrities. That is why we have celebrities and we have fans, because human beings are naturally hierarchical and and we always copy the behavior of those who are higher than us, better than us in social status, in power, etc. And because we associate their behavior with success. In an office, a junior officer sees a highly respected senior bureaucrat accepting gifts. Then that officer normalizes corruption as a perk of the service. As it is seen in our society, corruption, bribery is not seen as something evil by a lot of people, a huge chunk of people. They actually consider it as a perk of the service, of being in the service. Okay. Then, yeah, to understand that values are drawn from the environment, there's another wonderful example I want to bring to all of you. That is, I have to wait a minute. Give me 1 minute. If a human child is abandoned in the wild, let's say an imaginary scenario where a human child is abandoned in the wild and raised entirely by wolves, for example, like, Tarzan, will they possess the value of compassion, or will they understand justice as we know it, as we human beings understand compassion, sympathy, empathy, justice, these concepts? Will that human child who is raised in the jungle by a pack of wolves, will they automatically know just because they are human? No, they won't. They won't. They will possess the values of the pack, which is survival, hierarchy, and raw strength. That is the value of the pack of wolves, and they will learn that. This proves that values are not intuitive, but they are cultural constructs absorbed from the environment. Cultural constructs. Do remember, this is a keyword, absorbed from the environment. Then we have the spit experiment to understand societal value. Say in many countries, littering in the roadside, in public property, littering in the street is a casual habit, just like in India. We don't even care. We don't even think it is something unacceptable or evil. It is acceptable behavior. It is normalized in Indian society because social environment normalizes it. However, if the same individual, if an Indian person travels to Singapore, they automatically correct their behavior. They know that they will be imposed a heavy fine if they litter in countries like Singapore, who pay, or Japan, who pay very strict attention to public littering. Okay, the environment, the change in environment, and the heavy social disapproval, along with heavy social disapproval, will cause a rapid shift in behavior, overnight change, overnight instantaneous rapid change in behavior of an Indian person even. Why? Because heavy social disapproval and fines. Yeah. So this proves that how we behave and what values we carry is determined to a great extent by the environment we are in. Yes? Okay. So there's a psychologist called Albert Bandura who gave a theory called social learning theory, or it's also called observational learning theory. Observational learning theory. He says that we don't learn how to behave by reading about rules. We learn by modeling others, by observing others. As future administrators, you must realize that the subordinates and your public will not just follow your circulars or your orders, but they will copy your behavior. They'll copy your behavior. Okay. Can you see the slides properly? Why is it so small? At the same time, we cannot deny that the source of values, that there's something inside of us that acts as a filter to what we absorb from the environment. Now we have discussed how our environment plays a big role in what kind of values we inculcate and imbibe. But in that case, two siblings born in a family who are raised in the same environment with the same set of values passed on from their parents, they should have been identical then. They should have been very identical in their values. But we know that it is not the case. Just because two people, just because they are raised in the family, just because they are siblings, they can often display quite different sets of values. We have examples like, okay, let's understand this first. We cannot deny the fact that source of values is within, which guides one in making choices in acquisition of learning from the environment. Yes, there's a lot of things going on in our environment, but how do we choose what things to pick from the environment? Because there are infinite things that we can pick from the environment, but how do we choose? What makes us choose one thing from the other? There's something inside of us, definitely. We can say that there are universal or there are uniform or universal values inbuilt in each one of us. They flow out of the highest of our own self, our ultimate holistic potential. They refer to our intrinsic humanness. There is something intrinsic in us. We have and intrinsic humanness. Okay, individual or personal values vary to the extent one is conscious towards this inner source. We all are differently, like we all are the consciousness that we have towards the inner source which is in each one of us, that varies from person to person. The degree of consciousness, the degree of awareness that we have to our internal guidance system, to our intrinsic values, that degree of consciousness varies from person to person. Some people are more aware, are more awakened, whereas other people are not as awakened. In the extent to which one tends to compromise with it in the given cultural environment, some people do compromise even though they have this internal guidance system which is strong, but they try to mute it, they try to silence it. Thus, both the source within and the cultural environment are important for inculcation of values. Both the source within and the environment, both are important, and values are ultimately a beautiful dance, a beautiful interplay between a person's internal values and the environment they live in or they belong to. If we were only shaped by the environment, every child raised in a corrupt society would become corrupt, and every sibling living in a family would turn out identical, but they do not. We have already discussed this. Then our environment provides a massive buffet of behaviors. This massive buffet, our environment is like a massive buffet of behaviors, of biases, of choices. But what we have inside acts as a filter. The environment is the buffet and the internal is the filter. Our highest self or our intrinsic humanness. This is a key word, my dear. Intrinsic humanness acts as an inner filter. It is inbuilt universal compass seeking truth, fairness, and empathy that evaluates what the environment throws at us. The environment will keep throwing thousands of stimuli at us, thousands of choices at us, biases and prejudices at us, but our internal will determine and evaluate what we will pick and what we will leave. Personal values vary because we all are at different level of awareness. As we have already spoken, we all are at different level of consciousness, different level of awareness. Some people are at low consciousness, some people are more evolved spiritually, mentally, right? Sometimes we turn down the volume of our inner voice. There's always an inner voice, our conscience speaking to us. But sometimes some people, they turn down, they silence their inner voice to compromise with the environmental pressures like fitting in, like fear, like poverty, like bribery. You have an internal voice going on, but they turn down the volume. Yeah. So as we have already discussed, that our internal source is the seed every human carries, and the same universal seed of intrinsic humanness of values like compassion, justice, truth, etc. And the cultural environment is the soil. The soil can be either fertile. What is the example of a fertile soil, a fertile environment, like having a supportive family, having a just society? Or it can be toxic as well, having a corrupt environment, having a prejudiced society. A seed in toxic soil might struggle to grow, just as a seed in toxic soil, in soil that is not as nutritious, the seed will struggle to grow. But whatever type of plant, of seedling, of sapling that comes out of that seed is still determined by what seed it was. If it's a mango seed, a mango sapling will come out. If it's an apple seed, an apple sapling will come out. even though they have to struggle to come out, but the kind of seed will determine the kind of plant it grows into. So a true character is born. Similarly, a true character is born when the internal seed fights through the external soil, and ultimately it is determined by the type of seed and not by how toxic or how nutritious the soil is. Yeah. Now, ethical decision making often involves weighing values against each other. This is a real world and not an ideal world where making good choice and bad choice is just easy and black and white. As I have said, that most decisions, most choices are in that gray zone, or you will most likely be torn between two good choices. Which one to choose? If you have to choose between two good choices or two good values, two conflicting values, if or weighing one value against another, how will you weigh one value against another? Conflicts can result when people have different values, leading to a clash of preferences and priorities. Example, transparency versus confidentiality. Both are values, but both are contradicting and conflicting values, and the situation will decide which value you have to prioritize in that particular situation at that point of time. Okay, let me check. Mowgli, yeah. That time I did not see your comments, only now I can see. Yeah, like Mowgli, Tarzan, good afternoon. Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's continue. Are you attending classes regularly? Have you watched my earlier classes? Okay, now we'll discuss on this a little bit more about conflicting or contradictory values and what are you expected to do in situations as such. The clash of right versus right. In administration, the dilemmas rarely feature an obvious villain in administration. Okay, instead you're forced to weigh two equally desirable virtues. You have to weigh one against the other. Evaluating one means temporarily suppressing the other. If you are not evaluating, elevating, yeah, elevating, if you chose to go with transparency for that particular moment, for temporarily, you have to let go of the value of confidentiality, right? You cannot choose both. You cannot choose both. Okay, so preferences versus priorities. A conflict arises because different individuals, different cultures, or institutions rank these values differently based on the situation. It will always come down to the situation, to the culture, to different environments and institution when we have two conflicting values. Your job as administrator is to determine which value serves the larger public interest. When you are torn between two conflicting values, how do you make a choice then? How do you decide which value to prioritize or to elevate at that point? Always use this filter as your guiding system. Larger public interest, whichever value at that point of time, in that situation, in that culture, in that organization, going with whichever value, sorry, is better for the larger public interest, you will have to choose that. Not your own personal self-interest, but larger public interest. See, now to understand this better, I have made this chart See, this is the value conflict, examples of value conflict. Do remember this chart very well. It will be very handy, very useful for your exams, for your answer writing, okay? Examples of conflicting value, for example, transparency versus confidentiality. Both are values. Transparency is a value, confidentiality is a value, but you have to choose one. The dilemma is public right to know versus state security or citizen privacy. Sometimes in cases of RTI, sometimes for the sake of privacy, you cannot violate, you cannot disclose certain information. Sometimes for state security, you cannot disclose certain information. So confidentiality becomes important for state security or for citizen privacy, but also the public, we have to uplift, we have to prioritize transparency as well, because the public has the right to know. In that case, what can be the administrative resolution? Let's see. Keep it confidential only if disclosure causes direct, irreversible public harm. If it does not cause any direct, any obvious public harm, then you're supposed to be transparent. You're supposed to disclose and disseminate information. But if it causes direct, irreversible public harm, then you're supposed to keep it a secret. Like military secrets. Sometimes military secrets that cannot be disclosed. Not all secrets can be disclosed, and sometimes the identity of rape victims, for example, that has to be kept a secret. You do record it? Okay. You take how many classes? How many classes? I'm not able to exactly say at this point, but it will be around 30 classes, 30 to 35. Okay. Another conflict, value conflict, is compassion versus rule of law. Which one will you uphold? Rule of law or compassion? The situation could be, the dilemma could be helping a destitute person, will you help a destitute person versus strictly following rigid bureaucratic rules? Because just because a person does not have their documents, will you not allow them the service that they are entitled to? Okay, that could be the situation. Then pay attention here. Spirit over letter. Remember this phrase, 5-star phrase, spirit over letter. Spirit over letter. When there's a rule, there's a set of rules. Don't just go by the letter. Don't just take it for as it is in a very dry sense. Go beyond the letters, go beyond what is written, and understand the soul of the act or soul of the rules. Go to the spirit of the rules. Don't just get stuck with the letters as it is written. Go beyond that. Understand the soul of it. Understand the spirit of it. Why is it written? When there are strict bureaucratic rules, are they asking you to not be compassionate towards a destitute woman? Are they asking you to not be empathetic towards a destitute woman? No, they're not. When you understand the spirit behind it, behind any rule, any act, then you will make the right decision. Okay? Use administrative discretion to help, as long as it doesn't violate the core intent of the law. Core intent of the law. Core intent of any law cannot be to deprive people of their rights. That cannot be the core intent. You know it. So why can't you help? Of course you can. Then we have efficiency versus inclusivity. Efficiency versus inclusivity. Let's see. Moving fast using digital tools. This is an example of a dilemma. Moving fast using digital tools versus ensuring the poorest citizen without internet isn't left behind. Yes, moving fast, using digital tools, using technology, using biometrics, that is all good, yes. Versus, you have to see, you have to make sure that the poorest citizen without internet is not left behind. Yes? Equity first. Slow down the process slightly to build offline safety nets. What will you do in that case, in a dilemma like that? You'll just slightly, you'll not completely abandon technology, abandon the use of modern technology. You, of course, you won't do that, but you can, of course, slow down the process a little bit while you build offline safety nets. People who are not tech savvy, the aged population who do not know how to access their things digitally, for them particularly, we can build offline safety nets, offline centers, service centers where they can come and get their service done. Or people, old people with worn out hands who cannot give their biometric, their fingerprints. In that case, we will take special measures to help them. Yes? Wonderful. Are you all following? Then we have different types of values. Different types of values. In this section, we are going to learn what are the different types of values. What does it mean? Okay. So pay attention. There are relative values and absolute values. And then, as the name suggests, we know what relative is. We know what absolute is. Yeah. Relative values are context dependent, not absolute. They are dependent upon the context. They can change from situation to situation, from context to context. Okay. These values are subjective, of course. They shift across timelines, across geographic borders, and individuals even. It differs from timeline to timeline, from era to era. Yeah. From geographic border to border, from place to place, that means. And they are heavily shaped by what a specific culture or economy rewards. Whatever a specific culture, a specific society, a specific economy rewards, that is considered as a value for that particular area. Example, materialistic values are individual and society specific. Materialistic values, how much importance are you paying to material wealth? It differs from place to place. It is different in village, it is different in metro cities, it is different in India, it is different in the US, it is different in Dubai. Yeah, we'll discuss more in detail in the next slide about this. Then we have absolute values, which are universal and objective. Relative, subjective. Absolute, objective. These values are constant. They do not care about local customs or centuries or opinions. These are absolute. These are fixed. These are constant. They do not change. They exist independently of human approval, whether you care about it or not, whether you approve of it or not, because they are rooted in one shared intrinsic humanity. One shared intrinsic humanity. Pay attention here. Even if an entire society chooses to ignore an absolute value, absolute values are so strong that even if an entire society chooses to ignore it, suppress it, or go against it, the value itself remains true. It is still a value, it is still in power. Okay, example, non-violence. Example, equality, non-discrimination. No matter somebody believes in it or not, this value, these kind of values are not dependent on somebody's approval, on any human's approval. They exist independently of any human approval. They are constant and they do not care about local customs. They do not care about historic timelines or geographic borders or centuries or opinions or anything like that. To make things clear, Its relative values are like weather. It will change from place to place. It will change based on where you are standing and where you are observing from. It is like weather. It keeps changing based on the locality, based on where you stand. But absolute values are something like fixed, like gravity. Whether you believe in gravity or not, it doesn't care. It just exists no matter what. It is independent of your approval, of your opinion, or anything, of timeline or anything. Is it clear now? This is like absolute values is like gravity. This is like weather. Let's discuss more about the example of relative values and absolute values that we are discussing, the material values. We'll discuss more on material values, materialism, and success. See, cultural difference. In a capitalistic urban center like Mumbai or New York, a high premium is placed on materialistic values. In places like Mumbai, like New York, like LA, yeah, like Dubai, these are more materialistic cultures. More premium is placed on materialistic values in wealth accumulation, in career status, and individual consumerism are seen as indicators of successful life. Yes? However, in many tribal communities in India, like Dongria Kon, and even you can have endless examples of tribal communities of villages in India. The core value is communal harmony and ecological coexistence. Communal harmony, living in love, peace, and harmony with one another is prioritized. And ecological coexistence, being blended with nature, being one with nature, protecting nature, and using natural resources. Viewing extreme individual, these kind of communities view extreme individual wealth accumulation as a negative trait, as a vice. Yeah. So that is the cultural difference we are talking about. Then we have temporal difference. The value of individual privacy has changed from time to time. Temporal means time to time. It has changed, just as are the way of clothing, especially for women. It has drastically changed from time to time. If you go back to the timeline and check the value of individual privacy, we are taking the example of privacy here. It has changed over generations. What our grandparents thought as absolute secret, they would hide, they would care more about privacy. But now we can see with online platforms, with social media and new generation, Gen Z, they can freely express themselves. They can casually share online the same things that once upon a time our grandparents or earlier generations used to call absolute privacy. Then absolute values are invariant truths, like ahimsa, like non-violence. If a dictator takes over a country and legalizes torture, imagine a scenario where a dictator takes over a country and legalizes the torture of minorities. Does torture suddenly become good? Does it suddenly become a value, a virtue? No. Even if the state approves it, the absolute value of non-violence is intact. The absolute value of non-violence is violated, and the value exists whether the dictator apprehends it or not. Similarly, the values of human dignity, equality, the wrongness of slavery, the wrongness of untouchability, the wrongness of gender discrimination is an absolute truth, even when slavery was legal and socially acceptable. Slavery was once upon a time legal and socially acceptable globally centuries ago, but it was still objectively wrong. The human realization of values was delayed. Delayed understanding, delayed realization, but the value itself was always absolute and it will continue to be. Yes. Next, we have sacred values, and also we have protected values. And pay attention because there's a very minute difference, a nuanced difference, I should say. Some people, like from early experience, some people, most students get confused between, the difference between the sacred values and protected values. So pay attention. Okay. Sacred values are related to identity. Identity is the key word here. Identity, pay attention. Remember, sacred values are identity based. These are values infused with deep spiritual, pay attention, spiritual, moral, or emotional significance. Spiritual, moral, or emotional significance. They are treated with reverence and duty, and has an emotional factor, and spiritual and identity based. They are deeply tied to who you are as a part of a group, a religion, a nation, or a cause. Who you are, identity, that means. Whereas protected values are the absolute rule. These are specific moral principles that an individual deontologically, deontology is what again? Duty based. Deontologically refuses to trade off regardless of the consequences or benefits. These are protected values that are values that a person refuses to trade off no matter what. And why do they do so? Not because of any identity attachment. They do so because they do so deontologically, duty based, because they believe in it so much, believe in it so hard, not because they identify themselves with these values. It will become clear with examples. Just hold on, just wait. Okay, have patience. We'll take examples that will make it clear. It is a strict barrier against utilitarian calculations. No matter what the benefits are, no matter what the consequences are, and this goes against utilitarian consequences, because they don't care. Even if it brings greatest good to greatest number, they don't care. They're not willing to trade off. So the key trait of sacred values is proposing a trade-off for a sacred value does not just cause disagreement, it causes outrage and disgust. If you ask a person to trade off their sacred values, they do not just disagree that I will not do that. They won't just stop at disagreement, but it will cause outrage and disgust. Here, it focuses heavily on action, specifically what you are completely unwilling to do. Here, it does not cause outrage or disgust, but it causes disagreement and they're not willing to do it no matter what. Let's take examples. A value can be protected but not necessarily sacred. What do you mean? See, this example, an environmental scientist might have a protected value. This is a protected value regarding the extinction of a specific beetle species, or let's say in general, protection of the environment is more, most of the time, it is a protected value. One environmental scientist, he has a protected value regarding the extinction of one particular species. Okay, they refuse to trade its habitat for economic dam project under any circumstance. Economic dam, they're not agreeing, they are not willing to trade it off to risk the extinction of a certain species for the economic benefit of a dam project. It isn't a sacred religious symbol to them. They don't care about, they are not identifying themselves with that particular species. It has no emotional value or spiritual value or religious value as such, but it is a protected value. It is an absolute non-negotiable ecological boundary, not religious, not identity-based, not spiritual, but purely for ecological reasons. So this is an example of a protected value when it comes to environment. But again, you've read about sacred groves, right? Sacred groves. Sacred groves. But sacred groves, our forest areas, our trees are a part of the environment, but sacred groves are example of sacred values, not protected values, because a certain community is identifying with sacred groves, is worshipping at the sacred groves. Sacred groves are a religious and spiritual symbol to a particular community. In that case, even though sacred groves are a part of the environment, but here they are not fighting for any ecological reason. Here it is identity based. Here it is spiritual and religious symbol. And when you want to destroy a sacred grove, it will not just cause disagreement, but it will cause huge outrage. Is the distinction clear now? Is it clear? Here again, let's see. Sacred values. Let's take another scenario. To a soldier, a flag represents the lives of fallen comrades, national sovereignty and honor. His own comrades, his national sovereignty and honor. Therefore, it is a sacred value to whom? To that soldier. Yes, this is not a protected value but a sacred value because they are emotionally attached. They identify themselves. Offering them money to desecrate it is an insult. But let's take another observer, or let's take another person from a different country or an alien even, and show them the flag. Does it hold any meaning to a person of a different nationality? No, to them it's just a piece of cloth. Yes? So this is the example of sacred values. As an administrator, you must respect sacred values of communities like sacred groves, religious relics. When it comes to sacred groves, religious relics, cultural heritage sites, or burial grounds, when you work in administration, you have to take care of all these different types of places, types of landscapes. Burial ground may not mean something to you, but it means everything to a community, right? So treating them as mere infrastructure obstacles that you can just go about and destroy for the sake of developing, for the sake of the economy or for the sake of infrastructure development projects, that will cause massive social unrest. Yeah, I hope it's clear now. Next, we have a different type of value. It's called intrinsic value. Intrinsic values. What are intrinsic and what are extrinsic values? Intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic value, it is the value in itself or for its own sake or in its own right. These are the keywords. In and of itself, for its own sake, in its own right. But khatam. It is an end in itself. It is an end in itself, not a means to an end. Okay? It is the final destination. Pay attention to keywords. It is the final destination and it needs no further justification. It is the end in itself. It needs no further justification. It is an end in itself and in its own right, for its own sake. These are values. For example, love, beauty, truth, beauty, courage, freedom. These are ends in itself. You cannot ask someone, why do you need freedom? Why do you need love? Why do you need beauty? These are ends. Asking someone, why do you want to be happy? Makes no sense because it is an end in itself and these are examples of intrinsic values. Happiness is the end goal itself. Happiness is the end goal. You don't need happiness to get something else. You need happiness to get happiness. That's it. It ends there. Or you need other things to get happiness. I need to buy new clothes so that I'm happy. I need to go on vacations so that I'm happy. Yeah, happiness is the end goal. Then we have extrinsic values, means to some other value. Extrinsic values are means to some other values. They are not ends in itself. They are means. Means to some other value. Value that acts as a tool to achieve an intrinsic value. Through an using extrinsic value as means to achieve intrinsic value. Intrinsic values are end goals. It has no independent moral worth. Please pay attention here. No independent moral worth of its own. No independent moral worth on its own. It is of instrumental worth only. Instrumental or utilitarian your worth only. No independent moral worth. For example, wealth or physical fitness. Money is just a paper or a digital code. Money is just a paper or a digital code. It is only valuable because it allows you to buy security, comfort, and other things which have intrinsic values. It allows you to buy security. Money allows you to buy security. Money gives you security. Money gives you comfort. And the security and comfort are intrinsic values. If I tell you that you will get a huge sum of money, but you won't be able to spend any of it, not a single penny is usable, you cannot spend it. But it will be there in your account or it will be there in cash, but you won't be able to spend it. Will you want it? No, nobody will want it if you cannot use it because it has no intrinsic worth of its own. Okay? No moral worth of its own. Fitness is another example, is a tool to achieve intrinsic value of health. We are not wanting fitness for fitness's sake. We are wanting fitness for health's sake so that we can enjoy good health. Then we have personal values. What are personal values? Just now we have completed discussing about extrinsic and intrinsic values. Now we have personal values. Values practiced by an individual in isolation regardless of society dynamics. That is your own personal value. Regardless of social dynamic, practiced by an individual in isolation. Individual. Personal means individual and in isolation regardless of social dynamics. Example, punctuality or cleanliness. Being on time or keeping your room clean reflects your personal discipline. Even if you live alone on an island, you don't need social approval. Social values are values that govern interpersonal interactions. You cannot practice social values alone on an island like personal values. You can still practice your personal values while you're alone, stranded in an island. But social values come into play in case of interpersonal interactions and daily social friction. Example, courtesy. You cannot practice courtesy alone. You cannot practice charity alone. Yeah, you cannot practice courtesy in isolation. It requires the presence of another human being. Okay. Then we have community values. Community values. The unwritten moral expectations. It is slightly different from social values. Social values are like courtesy, charity, yes, you need. But in case of community values, these are unwritten moral expectations held by specific geographic, religious, or cultural group. There's a huge religious group, a geographic group, or a cultural group, and there's one set of unwritten moral expectations. Example, respecting and caring for elders in traditional societies, or shramdan, for example, in Indian society in rural areas, which is voluntary community labor. Voluntary community labor by huge group of people, then it is community values. Then we have universal values. What are universal values? What are universal values? Transcendent ideals shared across all human civilizations, all timelines, and all boundaries. As long as you are human, as long as anybody is human, they will consider these as values, and this applies, universal values applies to everyone as long as they're human. Transcendent ideas, for example, truth, beauty, goodness. You can also use the term Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram because in UPSC these terms, Sanskrit terms, are used. No culture on earth actively glorifies cowardice or deceit as its ultimate ideal. No culture, no matter from where, no matter Asian, Western, African, no culture, nowhere is cowardice or deceit or lying glorified as the ultimate ideal, as the ultimate goal. So truth, beauty, goodness, these are universal values independent of any specific culture. Then we have ethical values. Now, what are ethical values? What are ethical values? Let's see. The core professional standards that dictate moral duties and right conduct, particularly in public service. When we are talking about ethical values, we are talking specifically about public service or a person's personal life, a professional life. You're not talking about personal life, you're not talking about social life, you're talking specifically about public service and professional life. Professional life. Professional standards, see, it's written here, core professional standards that you need to maintain, that dictate the moral duties and right conduct, particularly in public service. Example, integrity. Example, impartiality. An administrator must remain neutral regardless of their personal feelings. You cannot be partial no matter what you think, no matter what your personal feelings are, no matter what your opinions are. You're expected to be impartial. Then we have democratic values. Pay attention, democratic values. Democratic values, the foundational principles required to keep a free, egalitarian political system functioning. Examples of democratic values are freedom of speech, equality, rule of law, justice, fraternity. These are examples of democratic values. In a sense, democratic values are those values that ensures that a country that is required to keep a free, egalitarian and political system functioning for good governance. Okay, it ensures the system treats the prime minister and the common citizen equally. It ensures, may or may not be practically, but at least in textbook it is. Then we have cultural values. Example, tolerance or Vaisudeva Kutumbakam, the world is one country. In the Indian cultural landscape, cultural values tied to a specific culture. The unique core philosophy is absorbed by a specific civilization over centuries, a specific civilization that has grown, that has developed, that has evolved over centuries, and the values and the core philosophies absorbed and exuded, absorbed and displayed by a particular culture. That is, in Indian context, it will be tolerance, it will be Vaisudeva Kutumbakam. Okay? Next, I think one slide is missed from, okay. Okay, we are good. Then, importance of values. Why do we even need values? How does it help us? How does it contribute to our lives? Very simple, very easy, very similar to importance of ethics in our life, ethics in our personal life, almost the same. It guides human behavior. It is a driving force in ethical decision making. Yes, it is a driving force in ethical decision making. It is an internal reference for good living, internal reference, internal filter, internal compass. Yeah, helps us differentiate what is right and what is wrong. It promotes peace and stability. Then we have to understand one thing. The difference. What is the difference? Pay attention here. This slide is important. What is the difference between ethics, morality, and values? Ethics and morality we have already discussed earlier. But how are these two things, ethics and morality, different from values? I'll draw a simple diagram that will make things easy for you. Did the exact opposite. Yeah. Pay attention to this diagram. Ethics are included inside of values. That means all ethics, all the qualities, all ethics is values, but all values are not ethics, cannot be called ethics. All values cannot be called ethics. All ethics are values, but all ethics, all morals are values. Values is something broader, something bigger. The horizon of values is bigger. Everything that is included in values cannot be called ethics, but everything that is included in ethics, they are automatically values. Values subsume ethics within it. Okay, all ethics and morals are values, but all values are not ethics. If you violate an ethical value, you cross a line into being wrong, unjust, or blameworthy. Such as, see, bravery is a value. Bravery, we like brave people. Bravery is celebrated. Bravery is a value, but not ethics. And people who are not brave enough, people who are fearful inherently, they cannot be called unethical just because they are not brave. They cannot be called unethical just because they do not have that much of courage as per your expectation. Bravery, therefore, is a value only. It is not an ethics. Okay? Values provide direction in determination of right versus wrong, good versus bad. It provides a sense of preference and internal direction. Values are like preference. Yes, we prefer brave people. We prefer punctual people. But just because somebody is late, you cannot call them unethical, at least in Indian scenario. But that also, there's a catch. It differs from society, like in Japan. We'll talk about that. Wait. It provides a sense of preference and internal direction. If you lack a certain value, you might be seen as less capable. If you lack a certain value, we value somebody with a good work ethic. We value somebody who works really hard. But someone who does not work as hard or someone who prioritizes work-life balance, that person cannot be called unethical. You might be seen as less capable, less efficient, or different, simply different, yeah, but not necessarily evil or corrupt. You cannot call them corrupt. See, I told you, but it is context dependent, especially when it comes to punctuality. In India, punctuality is generally treated as a value, as a desirable efficiency value. In India, punctuality, being on time, is a desirable quality, is a desirable efficiency value. If a meeting starts at 15 minutes late, it is seen as a poor management and unprofessional, but rarely does a society label the host as immoral or sinful. We do not call the host immoral or unethical or sinful because the meeting started 15 minutes late in India. But in Japan, punctuality has been elevated to a core social ethic. Punctuality is no longer simply a value in Japan. It has elevated and attained the status of a core social ethic where a train running 20 seconds, I'm not talking about minutes, I'm talking about seconds, 20 seconds late requires a public apology. To waste someone else's time is viewed as a breach of social contract and disrespecting human dignity. If you waste someone's time even for seconds, it is treated as disrespecting human dignity, shifting it firmly into the realm of ethics in Japan. Okay. Then let's take the example of conservation. Conservation is an evolving value. Evolving value. It is a value, but slowly evolving towards ethics. Let's see how. In many contemporary societies, recycling and reducing plastic use is seen as a positive lifestyle value. Yes, positive. If someone does not do it, they are seen as unenvironmentalist or but not criminal. They're seen as irresponsible. They're seen as not being aware. Yeah, but they are not treated as criminals. But as the climate crisis deepens, societies are rapidly converting conservation from an optional value to an ethical imperative, having a legal duty. There's a legal duty. Societies are shifting towards making conservation and protecting the environment towards a legal duty, because failing to conserve directly harms the survival rights of future generations. Therefore, we are calling conservation a evolving value. From a value, it is slowly going towards being an ethics. Being an ethics, and slowly elevated towards being a ethics, not just a value. So that's all for today, and we have to end here. Tomorrow we'll continue again with the later part. We will study lives of great people and the values that they displayed, that they exhibited. We are going to study different famous thinkers, philosophers, and other people and leaders tomorrow. Okay, not thinkers and philosophers, leaders. We are on the topic of value. Okay, so see you again tomorrow. Thank you so much and take care. Bye bye.